Welcome one and welcome all to the greatest show of them all. It is the NFC East Mixtape, which you can listen to on any one of SB Nation's NFC East blog podcast networks. You can also watch this show on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel or the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel. Make sure to check out bleedinggreennation.com, blogandtheboys.com, because you will see, hear, read, smell, maybe the two of us. He is Brandon Lee Gowton from BGN. I am RJ Ochoa from BTB. BLG, we were not here last week. It was a bit of a kind of, you and I putting it together as the days went along. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. Oh, we'll see. We'll try whatever before we kind of ultimately wave the white flag. And the highest mark of success that I think you can reach as a podcast, we got all sorts of messages from people who missed us.
Yeah, we missed the audience as well. Sorry that we couldn't make it happen last week, but it is the dead zone. Thankfully, it's not like a ton of like breaking news is going on. We missed that, so we would like to, and we're sorry that we missed last week, but we're back today, and it's going to be a fun episode. And I have a review, RJ, to kick it off. Are you ready for this?
Okay. Well, before you get to the, I just want to say I will take 80% of the blame for missing last week.
I wasn't going to say anything. I didn't. I mean, that wasn't. I mean, it's not. But like, look, people have. That's not. It's no one's fault.
We have been. We have actually never missed an episode.
That's what I mean.
A timeline that includes the birth of my son.
I missed one episode.
You did. That's right.
Because I was like, I literally couldn't. I was at training camp last year.
But so you couldn't record early in the week, and that's why I'm giving you 20%, and that's what I was aiming to do, because I knew I was going to be leaving out of town. But then I was like, well, maybe this and that, and then finally, again, we just had to sort of punt. So I'll take 80%. I'll give you 20. I think that's fair. But now it's time for the review, of course.
Review. This comes from RJ Ochoa. And it says, "You're the best." And that's in reference to me being the best for being so flexible and accommodating. So there you go.
Was that really the review? Or
yeah, that's it.
That's the bit? Is this one of those like, oh, it's like a super awesome bit that I came up with in my brain and everyone's going to think it's hilarious things?
I mean, it's not for anyone else. It's for me.
Not your best. I'll just say that. Not your best. I was out of town.
The less you like it, the more I do like it. So.
I was at a Houston Astros game, my first since they beat the Phillies in the World Series. Do you remember that?
I won a bet on the Astros the other day, so shout out to DraftKings.
That's right. Our sponsors over at the SB Nation NFL show. It was a great time. It was super fun. There were 13 of us, which was a bit of a hectic thing. First time taking the baby to an Astros game, so like managing the stroller turns out kind of a complicated thing. You know what I mean? But super fun time. Awesome win. We got commemorative World Series rings that they sent us, that they gave us there. My son got to eat ice cream out of an upside down batting helmet.
That's fun.
It was super cool. So very, very fun trip all the way around. I wanted to ask you something, speaking of the NFL show, that I asked Jeremy Reisman on this week's episode of Monday Football Monday. I also asked Rachel Prevet, our fantastic producer here. And it was, it was inspired by a thread I saw on Reddit. And it was, what is an app that you would recommend everybody in life get? And it can't be the Dunkin' Donuts app, because you've done that before. But so like an app designed for wellness in your life.
Wellness.
So like something that can help everyone, not something that helps you specifically. Not like, oh, well, I take the like whatever form of transportation, so this is helpful because I get to see like this and that, whatever. No, like something that anybody can use anywhere in the world, an app you highly recommend.
I'm looking through my phone here, and shout out to Jeremy for suggesting Ginger. That's a good one. That's not something that, as he mentioned, Vox Media pays for, but for everyone else, looking for maybe some mental health, I think that's a good thing to look into. Not a sponsor for us, but something our company uses. Have you ever heard of Belly? BELI?
No.
I think it's kind of a newer-ish, as in like maybe within a year or so. But yeah, I heard about this, and basically you can rate restaurants on there. So like, I guess kind of like Yelp, but a little different to me. In that like there's like map features, and also it's kind of more of like a social media aspect to it. Like you can like have your friends on there, and you can see what restaurants they've gone to, or there's like a list of like places you can add like places you want to go to. So I would check that out. I think it's like, I don't know if it's still invite only. I mean, I got in. I didn't like know anyone. I think it's easy to get in. But yeah, check that out. BELI. Not a sponsor, but if you're looking for some good restaurant ideas, and if you have like friends who you like to go to restaurants with and stuff, I think that's a fun app.
That is a good suggestion. That's something that everyone can use. So great job, you. Rachel's app was Peloton. Jeremy's was Ginger. You mentioned so also kind of a physical wellness. There's a mental, obviously, side to exercise as well. I'm going to come up with the second one since this was my question. And it's not as serious or as helpful as any of the ones that we've suggested so far. But the Giphy app. I don't know like how often you send gifts in various ways, and I know some places like some apps or platforms have their own GIF keyboard or whatever.
Integration.
But Giphy is cool because like if you don't have one, you can just go to Giphy. And it's very simple. You search for what you want, you tap it to copy it, and then you tap to paste wherever you're doing that, whether it's like texting or DMing or whatever the case may be. And you can save favorites. Like it is super handy for stuff like that. Again, more of a lighthearted thing, but Giphy. So 2 apps.
I'll throw out one more. Have you heard of Game Time? The Game Time app? Have we talked about that?
No.
There's this app called Game Time. Again, not a sponsor, but shout out to my good friend Laura Taylor, who had mentioned that she uses this to go see some Flyers games sometimes. So you can get, I think the premise is like you can get like tickets pretty cheap last minute, especially. So obviously there's like a lot of like SeatGeek and all those kind of things. But I think this for some reason is more like last minute thing. So you get like really good deals. So, not something you're like pointing out in the head so much as is like, hey, there's a concert, there's a game going on. Hey, let's go. And you can get some last minute cheap tickets. So almost like scalping, but like more legit, I think. Like, so.
Wow. Well, then I'll throw one more out because you inspired me. I told you before we started recording that I'm heading to California for a week soon. We're going to record ahead of time, everybody, so don't freak out again at this. So we were looking into all these things for the kid, right? Like take him, to the zoo and Legoland and all this different stuff.
The baby.
Right. And
it's interesting you're not saying his name.
It turns out that there's like a lot of money involved. For like all these places want money to see their stuff. And I stumbled upon used to be a great website, by the way. But I stumbled upon this thing called City Pass. I don't know if Philadelphia has it. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's a lot more economical. So you buy like a City Pass and you can kind of design and tailor it the way you want. And you get like 4 places, that you get to go to for that price. And so like in this instance, Legoland is one. And then you have like an option. You can choose of like 12 other places. You get to go to 3 of them. But it's more economical than buying the tickets for each specific thing from those specific places. So kind of a cool thing. I think other cities have it besides San Diego.
All right. After all the free plugs we give out, we should probably get into that.
We're also gonna plug some music at the end. We're gonna add songs to the NFC East Mixtape playlist. We are going to each add 2 to make up for last week, but we have to get to our conversation. Our most recent episode 2 weeks ago was the most underrated players in the NFC East, which means, Brandon, today we are the other side of that coin, the most overrated players in the division, surely going to spark some division and some debate and some dissension, the triple Ds. So we have to start with the Philadelphia Eagles, which is going to be a lot of fun. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? Like, how do you want to do this?
It was funny. I was listening back to the underrated episode. Not something I typically do. I know our good friend Rob Statsquera says you have to listen to your episodes. You have to do air checks and whatnot. But I feel like, first of all, I already listened to too many podcasts. I don't like have the time or interest level to do that. I mean, I'll check in sometimes on certain like segments if I thought I made like an interesting point or something that I might like want to use for writing or like kind of. But like I don't like listen to a full on episode. But I did in this case because I went to the beach with aforementioned friends of the podcast, Elizabeth and Holden. So it was funny to listen back and then argue with you like in a director's kind of cut of the episode where like you would say something and I would like pause it and then I would react. And it's funny, I would actually say the same thing out loud. So I guess that speaks to me having genuine reactions. Anyway, that tangent aside, starting with the Eagles, we're going to start with offense. I'm going to say I was between 2. It's tough to narrow these down sometimes. I think I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift. How do you feel about that?
So you're doing the thing I don't like, where you're picking players that weren't on the team a year ago, which was a qualm of mine.
So this was hypocritical because you did this for I think the Commanders or something last week.
I said that. I said that I was going against my own principle, but that they had such a difficult. It was very difficult to pick underrated players on the Commanders.
This is a fake rule. I never agreed to this, and
it's
also
not really
it just doesn't make sense
as much as it's just like a loose guy. It's like a dotted line to live in. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how you can pass people on dotted lines?
a great premise for this, because sometimes you get an addition in the offseason and there's a shine to a new player just because they're new, so they must be great or whatever, because you
So
haven't necessarily watched them fully yet and you don't have that full context, so they are being overrated. I think, especially specifically in this case, I think DeAndre Swift is not a bad player by any means, but I think he has so much like fantasy football cachet, and he went to a big program and he was like a early second round pick. Like, he was the top running back, I believe, in his draft class. Like, there's all this shine on him. And we're talking about a guy who averaged 560 rushing yards per season. like, does that match to you? I feel like the people who like, when you hear DeAndre Swift, like you would, and if I told you, okay, how many rushing yards per season is he averaging? I feel like people would be like, oh, 800, 1,000. No, like not even close. Obviously, he adds value as a pass catcher. But this is a dude who like has lost playing time consistently to other running backs in Detroit. Obviously, the Lions like comfortably moved on from him this year, even though they lost Jamal Williams, who had like 20 something one touchdowns and was their red zone guy definitively over DeAndre Swift. So I think he's rated highly due to his draft status and fantasy football and everything. But I think he's more of like a good player, not an amazing player.
So I think our Eagles picks are all like, they all have these weird kind of I don't call them labels, but just like tangential details that are somewhat important. And so like I
I think
agree
the word
with
you're
what
looking for is caveat.
yeah, I guess so. I agree with what you're saying, that there is this like hype around him because of the like fantasy football relevancy that he has or has had or whatever, which isn't even that high. I mean, to your point, like based on his statistical production, I do think it's worth mentioning that Jamal obviously replaced him last season, that the
Yep.
Lions moved on. The Lions seemingly preferred David Montgomery, who they signed in free agency, and they
Mm-hmm.
also obviously preferred Jahmyr Gibbs, who they drafted.
Mm-hmm.
So like not even like he was like fourth at best in their like plan this offseason. But I also think what has like elevated his hype, caveat, tangent, whatever, has been the trade happened at the peak nirvana of
Yeah.
Howie Roseman's dominating the draft. So like everyone
Well, and the
automatically
Georgia
was like,
angle and the Philly
yeah,
angle. It's like, oh, he's from Philly.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that kind of can get
And then
overrated.
there was the like fake tweet that I'm sure I don't think we
Oh
talked
yeah.
about it, about the Cowboys or whatever. Like it was like, again, like it's like it's like soaking wet with these like
Mm-hmm.
not real details. And so that I do agree with you has lent to like making him overhyped, but I think it's a cop out to not pick a player who was on the Eagles last year. Because that's like saying, well, every player on the Eagles is actually as good as they're properly like hyped or rated to be. So like I'm just gonna pick the new guy in town because of all this stuff. Like I do think it's
That's not my premise at all. I didn't say that at all.
well, then
And
pick a
also,
player who was on the team last year that's
no,
overrated.
I don't need to do that. Oh,
Cop
if you
out.
want one, I will give you one. But since I said I was between two, and the other one was on the team, but I do think people just think like DeAndre Swift's going to lead the Eagles in rushing this year. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think Rashad Penny could be over him. I don't even know if Swift might be second. I would think he will be second, but like I think people are assuming he's the top dog, and I don't, no pun intended, and I don't think that's the case. He could be. There's a path to that, but it's not like a guarantee. The guy who I had, uh, who else I had here was Jordan Mailata, because there's something that goes on when you or you get a player like late in the draft. I always think about this example more so earlier in their careers with Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett, because there was a time before the past couple of years where I think Josh Sweat made a big leap and Derek Barnett really did not, where Barnett and Josh Sweat pretty much posted similar numbers. Barnett actually had better numbers in some categories, like various pressure rates and whatnot. But because Derek Barnett was the 14th overall pick and Josh Sweat was a fourth round pick, who everyone thought was a steal, like people thought more positively of Josh Sweat
Yeah,
than they
the
did.
the
Even though
return on investment
yes.
clouds the like objectivity of assessment.
So when you draft a guy who doesn't know how to play football like at all, and Jordan Mailata, and then he turns into anything at all, then obviously like, wow, that's amazing. And now let's be clear, he was PFF's 9th graded offensive tackle last year, so this is ultimately why I did not pick him. But he allowed 8 sacks per Jimmy Kempski's charting. Jimmy Kempski went back and looked at all of the sacks that the Eagles allowed last year, and he charted like who was most to blame. And Mailata was at the top. and that was up 3.5 sacks from last year. So again, I don't think he's a bad player. And he did have some injury issues last year, which, to be fair, though, he's had them like throughout his career. That's been a consistent issue. So you can't just totally throw that aside and say it's fluky. I don't think that at all he's a bad player, but I do think it's kind of fair to say like he didn't necessarily take another step forward last year, as he may have like plateaued a little bit. And also by nature of like the Eagles' offensive line getting so much praise all the time, it's the best offensive line in the NFL. I think it's possible sometimes players on a unit like that can kind of get more benefit of the doubt than they might deserve.
Yeah, like the I mean, this is like really really like examining or microscoping the point, but it's like the Jason Kelsey reputation like then applies to everybody. You know what I'm saying? Because they're like all on the offensive line, but somehow, some way, some guys still slip through the cracks, which is why like I said Landon Dickerson last week for underrated. Okay, at least you stood tall, all 5'9" of you, to the challenge, and answered somebody who was actually on the team last year. Are you ready for mine?
Yep.
So my approach was a little bit different, like I'm saying, with the caveats. And so it was almost like projecting overratedness. So like, I think that like my thoughts on Madden, thank you, Bear. Madden, the game, are well documented. I had a tweet about them when the trailer came out, which was whatever. But
yeah, you love the game. You think it's good.
Like looking at their like Madden rating, so to speak, like this is a weird way to put it, but then like in forecasting what their season will look like in assessing like how much they will over underperform that rating, if that makes sense. And so I think Bear, that is enough.
He's furious. Cool. He's furious.
I think you're gonna be upset with
You're going to pick Jalen Hurts, aren't you?
No. I really thought about it because I thought like there's no way, right? Gosh. Like there's no way he can be this good ever again. Like it's impossible, but maybe he will be. You know what I mean?
Like, I think he's properly rated where he is right now.
And that's where I came back to. It's like, okay, like while it's impossible or improbable for him to, stabilize right here, he is properly rated based on who he has been as a player right now, right? Like that's just where we're at in this given moment. Yep. So there's a little bit of the phenomenon I described in my pick. And look, you mentioned stats. He's the one who on a podcast hated on him more than I did in a professional sense. And that's AJ Brown. And some of this is AJ Brown. Hear me out.
This is such a terrible pick.
No, well, it was very difficult. I really honestly had a very difficult time.
It was going to be easy last week because there's so many players who
I thought it would be. I thought it would be. And then I got like to looking at it and I was like,
how is AJ Brown overrated?
Again, I don't like overrated's not the right word, but
that's literally the premise of this episode.
I know, but I couldn't find a player that I felt was overrated on offense. I feel like the answer is really easy on defense, but so on offense, it was more like who is most unlikely to have the success that they had in 2022. That was ultimately what I picked. And I actually think it's more likely that Jalen Hurts has the success that he did than AJ Brown. And to be clear, that's not to say that AJ Brown will be bad. Like he was, do you realize how stupid awesome AJ Brown was last year? Which again, made my they lost the trade for him take look so stupid. He had 4 yards shy of 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns. And then I was looking at this and I was like, there's no way that the 11 touchdowns is like sustainable. In his 4 NFL seasons, he has had at least 8 touchdowns 3 different times. He's had 11 touchdowns twice. The only season in which he didn't at least hit 8 touchdowns was that final season in Tennessee in 2021 when everything was kind of weird and wonky. And I think we're willing to give him a little bit of a pass for that. But the number that really stood out to me, do you know how many targets he had last year?
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head.
So his career,
I know he led the team in targets.
His career high in targets before last year was 106, and that was in 2020 with the Titans.
Yeah, because the Titans run the ball all the time.
Right. He had 145 last year. That's a lot. Like that's a massive jump. You're talking a 40% increase. So like I don't want to call it underrated. I know the premise of the episode. I had a very difficult time picking an underrated player. I'm really if he's fed, I don't see how he won't be. But like I could see from a purely statistical sense, right? Like if we look at his stat line for 2023, when it's all said and done, I could see there because of the emergence of Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and all sorts of other things. I could see that the targets dipping, the yardage dipping, the touchdowns dipping, and then coming to a consensus after the season, like, well, yeah, he underdelivered based on the hype that he had entering the season. That's my overall take.
I think his targets could actually go up because there was an interesting article out recently. I think it was on Sharp Football Analysis where there's a point because of the Eagles game script, even though I talked about the Titans not running the ball or throwing the ball a lot, and that's true. I mean, the Eagles didn't necessarily like do it a ton in the sense that, I mean, they did it earlier in games, but because they built so many leads last year, I think Jalen Hurts and Cooper Rush ended up having like the same amount of fourth quarter pass attempts or something last year, just because of like that's how favorable the game scripts were to the Eagles. So in theory, I don't think the Eagles are going to find themselves in that identical situation being that good again. So I could see the passing volume actually potentially go up because I think they're going to be in some closer games than they were last season. And I just don't think, I don't know. I think this is a tough case because like, what are you saying? Like he's not like a top something wide receiver. I think he's a top 5 receiver. I think in the NFL.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But like, so if we considered that, if we looked at all of the stars on Philly's offense, which again, this was how I had to approach the exercise.
Like, what's his weakness? Like, what would you say is a flaw for him?
Again, like, hear me out. If we looked at the likelihood of Jalen Hurts maintaining status quo, Devontae Smith maintaining status quo, Dallas Goedert maintaining status quo, AJ Brown maintaining status quo, who was the least likely to hold?
I mean, I don't think it's AJ. I think AJ's like Hurts' go-to guy.
But I think it's very likely that Jalen Hurts remains a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, right? That's pretty likely. I think it's extraordinarily likely that Dallas Goedert, whatever. I think it's extraordinarily likely that Dallas Goedert remains a top, whatever you want to call him. Let's keep this top 5 tight end in the NFL. And I think it's extraordinarily likely that Devontae Smith continues to kind of rise in terms of career production.
Well, why is that true for Devontae and not AJ?
Because he's entering the 3rd season. Like that's kind of like a chalk thing, right? Like 3rd season receivers, and he's been a part of the team. He has a longer history. I agree with you that AJ Brown obviously has the connection with Jalen Hurts, and that was a big reason why he ultimately landed in Philly. But like his season was so extraordinary last year that I just, again, if I have to bet, and I don't think it's likely, but if I have to bet on one regressing, I think it's AJ Brown. The guy was rightfully received MVP votes. I mean, he had every decoration and honor that you could possibly earn. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, what is the higher ceiling for him? There's a higher ceiling for Devontae, for Goddard, for Hurts, technically, because he controls so much because he's the quarterback. Like, it just felt. I thought about going Lane Johnson or Mailata, but that felt like lame and weak to me.
Do you know how old AJ Brown is?
I'm gonna guess he's like 24 years old.
Turns 26 in 3 days from when we're recording this, 2 days from when it's posted. So he's only 26. Like he's still like,
so
he's in his
again,
prime.
I approach this not as in I think he's overrated, but like who are
that's the premise of the episode. What are you talking about?
But it's a difficult thing to answer. Like, so
you said it was easy last week.
Okay,
all right.
Without ranking them, I know I was wrong. Who were the 5? It was 2 weeks ago, by the way.
He finally said it, folks.
Who were the 5 best receivers in the NFL? You don't have to rank them, but like who were the 5?
I'm bad at this kind of stuff because like I have to like see the list of teams, but like you're probably talking about Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase is in there, Stephon Diggs,
Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs,
Hill, and then I think 4. After that, you're kind of. I think AJ belongs in 5. He had a down year last year, relatively. I think you have to put AJ above him, especially after what he did last year.
So if we look at, you're saying he had a down year relatively, Deebo Samuel last year.
Yeah,
you're right, but the season before in 2021. He had 121 targets, 1,400 yards. He only had 6 receiving touchdowns, but he had 8 rushing touchdowns. And again, we're talking about
AJ was better.
No, but we're talking about a more unique thing. But like, again, it's like a year ago, if we had been like, who are the top 5 receivers, like Deebo is squarely in that mix. And he was still like a really good player, an amazing player for the Niners last year, but he had like a down year. I think if you're a quote unquote top 5 receiver, that's the easiest top 5 club to fall out of. That's my argument. Like, generally speaking, we see the same level
for this.
we see the most consistency when it comes to top 5 quarterbacks, certainly when it comes to tight ends. Running backs is weird, you know what I mean? And again, I didn't want to go DeAndre Swift because I think that's stupid. And I don't think Devontae is like even. I think he's finally rated. I don't think anybody's
closer
like,
to being underrated than overrated because of the shine that AJ gets.
That's my point.
You're almost saying that here. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so again, I don't think AJ Brown is like my take last year about how the Eagles lost the trade. I've atoned. I wrote my apology letter, et cetera, et cetera. AJ Brown is awesome, but it was very, like, this is why the Eagles were such a great team last year, because like there was not the most like hollow part of their production is like, can they do it again? You know what I'm saying? And so like, if I have to pick one thing that is like unlikely or the least likely to maintain and hold and crossover again, it would be this. And Debo is a great example of that. Because like, could you not see us having the conversation a year from now saying who are the top 5 receivers, and Jalen Waddle being in the mix, or DJ Moore if he has a great year, or Garrett Wilson with Aaron Rodgers, or CeeDee Lamb,
I would be
or Amon-Ra
shocked
St. Brown.
barring injury, I would be shocked if AJ isn't like still that level of player this season.
And Debo missed time last year. That was part of it too. I mean, so
but he also like plays a especially like grueling like style of play that kind of I feel like lends to injury more than other receivers.
Do you not agree though with the premise that, and I'm not saying it is likely, but that he is the most likely to not be able to repeat the stupid amazing season that he had?
He's like he might be the best player in the team.
I just think he's
in that conversation.
How many players have 1,500 yards in back-to-back seasons? Like how many?
I think AJ could do it. He is really good. Again, what is a hole in his game? Do you see any? I don't. I legitimately do not.
Justin Jefferson has just done it, by the way. So he has 1,400 as a rookie, 1,600
he's
and
that
then
kind of player.
Well, he has that kind of quarterback, Justin Jefferson. That's really what it.
All right, let's move on to defense. I'm gonna say Darius Slay. I mean, shocker.
That's the answer. I mean, yeah.
It's just, and also like, sorry, but like he's lent to this. If you insist on being called Big Play Slay and then you do not make big plays, you are overrating yourself. This is a guy who had his highest graded games last year against, can you guess the quarterbacks? It was Cooper Rush. It was Kirk Cousins in that primetime game, which was, to be fair, an amazing performance on Justin Jefferson, who we just praised. And Darius Slay absolutely deserved Defensive Player of the week for that week. He was amazing, no bones about it. But then his next highest graded game, Davis Mills, in a game where Brendan Cricks didn't play. And I think Nico Collins was like their second leading receiver last year, and he didn't play either. Like they had no one at wide receiver in that game. It was a short week. It was on Thursday night. You look at his grading through from week 1 to week 6 last year. He was targeted 32 times. He allowed only 14 catches for 168 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 3 interceptions in that span, 31.8 passer rating. So I think this is a thing that happens sometimes. I think sometimes in certain seasons, a guy starts off like really hot, and then people just like act like he was that player the whole year. Like, oh, he was great. He was amazing the whole year. And that wasn't true. Week 7 through the Super Bowl, he was targeted 51 times. He allowed 33 catches for 391 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He had 0 interceptions after picking off Cooper Rush, Mr. Big Play Slay, and he allowed a 114.1 passer rating. So, and another thing I always kind of that bothers me about him is that, like, I try to be understanding because he seems like a guy that a lot of the players like. He's a fun personality. He's kind of goofy guy. I respect that, but I don't think that's an issue as much as you get named a team captain, and then you're on Twitter after these games when people are like getting on him. And I get like he's frustrated that like fans want to blame him, and especially when it might not truly be his fault on a certain coverage, depending on how it's called or how he's supposed to play it. But like, I kind of don't need him being on Twitter after the game as a team captain, especially being like, well, that wasn't my fault. Well, like, dude, so you're just basically throwing a teammate under the bus. Like, I don't know why you need to do that publicly. That doesn't really make sense. That's not really like team captain behavior to me. I don't really think like Jalen Hurts would do that, for example. So that's kind of weird to me. I think he's kind of overrated.
I think he's kind of always been overrated, like as an Eagle, right? Like I think sometimes a player goes from a small market to a big market. So like in this case, he goes from the Lions to the Eagles, right? Like he go from like 2 at the time 2 primetime games a year, maybe to like 5, right? And like all of a sudden, like the stage is bigger. Like we're sort of seeing that to a degree with just based on recent memory, Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, right? Like obviously they played for big teams and had lots of success, right? But like just the last year at least. I think I've told this before. Joe McCoy said he never played for the Cowboys, unfortunately, because of the injury, but he said he had played on primetime 1 time in his like 10 years with the Bucs. And then he joined the Cowboys. He was like, holy crap, we're on primetime 5 times. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of happens. Like you get this like glow up because of you're now a part of like the big machine. And I think that happened to Slay. And I don't like just because you're overrated doesn't mean you're bad. Like I think he's actually overrated.
I don't think he's like a below average cornerback. I think he's an above average cornerback, but I think people act like he's like a top 5, top 10 cornerback. He certainly thinks that. And I
Unlike
just don't think that's
unlike my
true
take on my take on AJ was very unique and meant in no disrespectful
and
sort of
wrong.
way. And not that this is disrespectful either. But he's actually like this is an actually overrated player. But I think he's only and this is why this is such a unique like exercise we do every year. I think he's only overrated by some Eagles fans. Like I don't think there's anybody or I don't think there's like a Rams fan or like a Bengals fan who's like, man, I would totally trade for Darius Slay right now. And I don't even think all Eagles fans think he's awesome. You know what I mean? Like it's just
I
there's this hive that like really really hypes him up.
He might not even be, and I don't think he is, the best cornerback on his own team. Like that's what we're talking about here. When you have
Well,
James
when you brought
Bradbury
up
here as well.
when you brought up the Twitter trashing, like I know that I don't mean to I really don't mean to poke anything, but like I'm just pointing this out. I thought it was really noble that James Bradbury after the Super Bowl was like, yeah, it was holding. Like
Yes.
how many players would do that? Like not even corners, like players of any kind, any position, with a moment that big, that massive after a season like the Eagles had just had, like that is a really noble thing. And that's the exact opposite of like Slay
I,
running to Twitter or situations or whatever the case may be.
I do think people get that moment a little wrong in the sense that like James Bradbury wasn't saying the refs definitely shouldn't have thrown a flag there. That's not what he said. He said that he was doing a lot of what he did on that play all game long. And yes, it's fair they threw a flag there, but he also pointed out they weren't throwing that same kind of flag for that same kind of contact earlier. I don't think he was making an excuse. He was just being honest. He said, "Yeah, they got me there. They should have thrown a flag, yes, on that play." But he also admitted, I did it earlier in the game and they didn't throw flags in that moment. That's neither here nor there. I want you to do you know the 5 quarterbacks that Darius Slay has picked off during his time with the Eagles? Can you
So we're
name them?
talking 3 years, by the way.
Because
He
2
he
of
has
them have played for the Cowboys.
he has 8 interceptions. I'm sorry, 7 interceptions
7.
in the regular season, as an Eagle.
He's picked
Cooper
out 5
Rush.
different quarterbacks and 2 of them multiple times. Cooper Rush is one,
So
yes.
you're saying his 8 interceptions as an Eagle have come off of 5
5.
quarterbacks.
His 7
Okay.
He's only in 7. 7
I'm sorry,
interceptions have
sorry.
come off
So
5
his 7
quarterbacks.
interceptions. Okay. Cooper Rush. I'm going to say Andy Dalton.
Yep, that's 2 of the 5.
Um,
The next 2
I'm
are
gonna
2
I'm
are
gonna
from your
say
boy last year.
Kirk.
Yep.
So that's 3 quarterbacks. I'm gonna say Taylor
So
Heineke.
Andy Dalton, Kirk, nope. But how about
Okay, hang
one
on.
Trevor's?
Is Daniel Jones one? Has to be one.
No,
Teddy Bridgewater, is he one?
no.
But he had the fumble return, right? Like it was the Teddy fumble return or whatever it was in Denver.
Yeah, that wasn't Teddy Bridgewater didn't tackle him. Is what you're
Right,
thinking
right.
of,
I knew there was a Teddy thing.
but
Okay,
that
I
wasn't
don't know
like
the other
Teddy's
two. We've
fault.
gone really long on the Eagles. So like, who are the other
Anyway,
two?
hold on. It's Andy Dalton. It's Sam Darnold. It's Trevor
Ooh.
Siemian. It's Kirk Cousins, and it's Cooper Rush. So big play Slay is picking off these quarterbacks. Like
Sam
that's
Darnold, the Panther.
it's almost
And
It's almost
Trevor Siemian,
on the
the
Saints.
Saint. Right.
Yes.
Wow.
This
Oh
is almost like the Jonathan Gannon of cornerbacks. Like, okay, putting
Oh,
up some good
dude.
numbers
Oh
against
my
bad
gosh.
quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's
That was
tough.
harsh. I'm not trying to say Slay is a bad player. That's not my point. As we say with the overrated thing, I don't think he's a bad player, but I just don't think he's like this top. He's not elite. I just think there's a perception he's elite, and I don't think he's elite.
Again, I think you're fighting a specific section. Like my AJ Brown thing was fighting a specific idea, and it was like regression. You know what I'm saying? Like, was really like the genesis of my point. You're fighting like a certain army that believes he's elite. Because like if we play the top 5 game again, like who are the top 5 corners in the NFL? Like,
It's almost the Swift thing. It's like there's not so much. I mean,
both from the Lions.
there is fantasy football for defense, but not like as popular as offense. But I think it's that same kind of, it's just name recognition. I think there's a lot of name recognition when it comes to Darius.
He has a big name on a big team that has a lot of success. Like those things tend to lead to lots of talk. Okay, let's do the Cowboys. You went first. Do you want me to go first? Like, how do you want to do this?
So I went first with the Eagles.
So again, this was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, like overall, as evidenced by my AJ Brown pick. And so I thought about going Dak because they're like kind of like Slay. Well, like kind of like Slay, there's an army. And in fact, I'm gonna go Dak because I believe in Dak Prescott. I think he is a top. And unlike other positions, I think this moves more than anything. Like I think maybe like week 2 to 3, the top 5 quarterbacks are 5 guys. And then I think that changes a little bit like weeks 3 to 4. And I think Dak floats in and out of that. I think he's squarely out right now of the Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, you want to throw Herbert in there, whatever discussion. I think, we need to see a little bit more from Jalen Hurts to see whether we're going to put, this is an independent point, whether we're going to put him in that mix full time, right? Like we've seen it more from those other quarterbacks, whatever. But I think Dak is very firmly, very squarely top 6, top 7, top 8 on a given day. Like I said, that moves around. But, and this happens with the Cowboys a lot because they get, bagged on a lot by a lot of people, yourself included. And to where like the defense becomes so strong that we like we're just like it's just fighting for no reason, and we're like lurking, or like we're waiting for the shoe to drop to like fight and argue and defend Dak Prescott. And so like that should and that needs to happen, but like we can't go too far. We can't make up things that aren't true. And so I believe he is a top 6, 7, 8 quarterback, but I think that there are some Cowboys fans who believe he's like a top 3 quarterback. That's simply not true. Like he is not. And at this point, I think it's stupid to say like, oh, well, we're too deep into his career to know that he's ever going to win a Super Bowl. That's dumb. But I do think that we are deep enough into things relative to the league as a whole where we can say he's never going to be, no one's ever going to be on Mahomes' level, but he's probably not going to be on Allen's or Burrow's level right now. And those are the bars that you have to clear. That doesn't mean you can't win a Super Bowl with him. That doesn't mean he isn't very good. Doesn't mean he isn't worth the contract, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the context matters here. But my answer is Dak Prescott.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. I think that's a fair point by you. Jimmy Kempski had some interesting points on Dak, which maybe we'll get when we get Jimmy on here and talk about that series a little bit more.
Sorry, my last 2 cents here. Sometimes though, the like overratedness, then, and we talk about this a lot, then leads to like becoming underrated. You know what I mean? Like and that, like that is the Dak cycle. Is like he gets bagged on and bagged on and bagged.
Overrated that he's actually underrated.
Look, I know that you're upset that the Celtics vanquished the Sixers, but you don't have to take it out on Bill.
I mean, Celtics also kind of had an embarrassing.
Yeah, after they beat the Sixers. So, I mean.
Anyway, I think Dak's actually like maybe a little bit underrated from the standpoint of I said, isn't that actually who I picked? Is that who I picked? No, it was not, right? For underrated, it couldn't have been. No,
I thought about to buy you some time. Similar
no,
to you,
sorry, he was my bounce back guy because he's an obvious because of the interception rate being high and everything.
The regression, if it doesn't work out for AJ, is going to work out for Dak in an interception standpoint, right? Like there's no way.
To some extent, yeah, but it might not be like dramatic. It might be slight, but we'll see. I think that's
quickly. I thought about going Tony Pollard because like I do think there's a lot of like he's a top, and I actually think he is a top 5 running back, but like that's such a loose foundation. Like what does that even mean?
But also he's not, I think, really proven as a volume player either. Like the talent, efficiency, but like there's still a big question mark when it comes to being able to handle like a full like workload a whole season, like the bell cow. He has not proven to be a bell cow back. I think isn't that fair to say?
That is. So I think the best running back in the NFL is Christian McCaffrey. Is that fair?
And that dates back to college, by the way. Like Tony Pollard has never been this guy. Yes.
So who's number 2 on that list? Like that's so impossible to answer.
I need to look at the rosters. Nick Chubb.
Okay, that's fair. But like my point is like you get to like I don't know a lot faster than you do any other position, and you not only get there like I don't know because it's a tight decision between 2 players, but so like it's easier to become a top 5 running back than it is like receivers different. Like I'm saying because everyone is amazing, but like there's such a lack of consistency at running back that it's just a weird game. But so anyway, those are my picks. But Dak is my pick. You're right.
I thought about going. It's more like honorable mention, like Jake Ferguson or Luke Schoonmaker. Just be like the tight end. Because like it's just like the Cowboys soon be like, oh, we lost Dalton Schultz, which I don't think is the biggest loss. Although I think you had Dalton Schultz over Dallas Goedert in our All NFC East team last year, which I think was crazy. But I think I had to go Tyron Smith because I think there's an idea that like he just has to stay healthy. And I don't know if that's the case anymore. Well, first of all, that's easier said than done. Second of all, like I can't help but wonder if all these injuries are kind of taking its toll. Last year, he ranked 67th out of 89 offensive tackles graded by Pro Football Focus. Now, obviously, he was coming back from the injury. I'm sure that factored in to some extent.
But and he played on the right side, which he hadn't done since he was a rookie. I'm just for context.
No, I'm not like arguing, but I'm just saying like those injuries may have taken a toll. He's entering his age 33 season, and as I'm sure you're aware, but I don't know if listeners are as aware, he entered the league really young. So this is actually his 13th year, in the league. And I think that kind of gets lost sometimes, like snap count versus age. I think he might be like a little bit older than your typical 33-year-old in the NFL because of all that wear and tear. Obviously,
tread on the tires.
Yes, well, lacking tread. You want more tread. But yeah, so I think it's him because I think there's just an idea that like he'll be good if as long as he's healthy. But like, I wonder if the injuries have kind of taken a toll. And not saying it's gonna be a disaster out there, but I think he might kind of dip. I think some Cowboys fans would like have him as their all NFC East team left tackle or whatever, or say he's the best tackle in the East. Or some people nationally might say that, or at least like argue between him or Andrew Thomas. And I don't think he deserves that benefit of the doubt right now.
My favorite part of doing this exercise every year is because it's a great introspection at how, like, and we're just two people here, right? Like the great part about the mixtape is like you leave Eagles land and I leave Cowboys land and we meet like here in the like middle land for, an hour every week. I don't like my read, like there are not a lot of Cowboys fans that think that, you know what I'm saying? There are a lot of Cowboys fans who are kind of like, man, like they should just move on from him. Like because
that's like the Jason Peters effect, like back when he was playing for the Eagles. Yeah.
And it's not that anybody thinks he sucks, right? Like, and I do think sometimes you see the take like, oh, when healthy, he's one of the best left tackles in the NFL. And that might be true if you define
so it might be more of a national perspective than a Cowboys perspective.
If you define one of as like top 10, yeah, I think he has certainly still the potential. Like he's talented enough when he's healthy to be a top 10 left tackle in the NFL. The problem is when he's healthy. I've said this many times on many podcasts. He has not played a full season since Dak Prescott was in college. The last full season he played was 2015. Dak Prescott has literally seen change at the left tackle position, and he's obviously been injured at different points too, but every single season of his NFL career. And that's created if you ask Cowboys fans, like the thing they're most concerned about, it's the offensive line because okay, well, who are your best five? Like Tyron's on the team, right? Like he adjusted his contract and everything. So you have like, you're not going to not have him around, but his presence does create complications because it's like, well, do we play him at left tackle? Cause we have Tyler Smith now, you know what I mean? Like, and Tyler's the future. Like, should we just like, is the future now? Like the future was now a year ago. Like, should we just go back to that future? And if we do that, what do we do with Tyron? Do we play Tyron at the right side like we did last year? But what about Terrence Steele? He's really good. Oh, but Terrence Steele's also come back from an injury. Like, what do we do? Like, and beyond all that, thank you, Bear. Like, Tyron is gonna get hurt. So, like, where do we put him so that when that does happen, we're ready? You know what I mean? Like, his presence is a good thing, but it is a double-edged sword because it brings with it lurking complications. So, I think he's, in my opinion, properly rated by Cowboys fans. But there are, I think, I agree with you, some people who probably do. And that happened with the Cowboys offensive line after the Zach Martin draft. They were the best, like from 2014 through 2016.
All time.
Well, no, like they had a 3-year run there. The DeMarco year, Zeke's rookie year, they were the best offensive line in the NFL. And a big reason why was they were so healthy. They were so consistent. I mean, even with Tyron missing time, in 16, but they just like, we have this idea that like all Cowboys linemen are amazing and all Steelers linebackers or all the receivers the Steelers draft are amazing and all Penn State linebackers are amazing. I recognize the Cowboys have two, but or have had to, but it's just like we lean on these like narratives and force them to be true all the time. So there is some of that like still propelling Tyron up on a national level. I do agree with that.
Defense, who do you have?
This is like, I think my picks are unpopular with different fan bases. Like, I think that there are some Cowboys fans that are like, what the hell are you doing going Dak? And obviously I'm going to get some pushback from the Eagles fans on the AJ thing. I hope my explanation made sense. But so I think this defensive pick is going to upset some Cowboys fans. My pick is Donovan Wilson. I love Donovan Wilson. Went to Texas A&M, fighting Texas Aggie, just like me. Hullabaloo, connect, Dono. That's great.
Just like you.
But like and I said J-Ron Curse last year. You always keep the notes, I don't do a good job of that, which is
I went with him as underrated, and you picked him as overrated.
Right. So, but like last year, it was like, oh, J-Ron Curse is amazing, and I just didn't believe, and I was wrong. But like Donovan Wilson had an amazing year last season for the Cowboys. It was a contract year, and I'm not saying that's why I don't buy into that trope that a lot of people do, but it was amazing. But like the likelihood of like, oh, well, he was just one player for 3 years, and now he's this like elite whatever, because of this 4th year. It's possible, and I would love to believe that it's true. I'm just too scared to believe. I'm too hesitant. Maybe I'm too negative. I'm too doubtful. I don't buy that. Right now, it is literally 2022, the exception, the outlier in the overall statistical sample size that is his career. And some of it too, and I would say this is true for AJ Brown in the same sense in a different way, is AJ Brown gets to play opposite of Devontae Smith. Donovan Wilson gets to play on a defense that features Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. And the game isn't like, oh, put this player on a different team. Would they be the same? Because that's dumb. But like, I think there are Cowboys fans who think he's one of the best safeties in the NFL. I'm not willing to go to that level yet.
Maybe I'm like misremembering. I'm looking up his grading from last year from the game, and it actually wasn't. No, actually, it was bad. Yeah, Donovan Wilson. I was going to say anecdotally, I remember Donovan Wilson getting like cooked a decent bit in that Eagles Cowboys game on Christmas Eve. Like I remember like Devontae having some big plays over, and yeah, he's number 6. I remember 6-on-6 happening there a little bit. I think AJ, he struggled with him a little bit too at times.
He had 5 sacks last year. At that point, entering last year, he only had 3.5 total, which all came in 2020. He had 101 combined tackles. His previous career high was 71 in that 2020 season. And a big reason why was he only played in 9 games in 2021. But again, like, and the Cowboys paid him and brought him back and didn't pay a ridiculous amount. And I'm happy about that. Like, that was the right and the smart thing to do. But like, that doesn't mean that he's like, one of the best safeties in the NFL. Like, you know what I mean? It can be true that he's very good. He's slightly better than average, and it is a good thing for him to be around the team. But they also have 2 other safeties that I really like. And they have a kind of safety option in Israel Mukuamu, who I really like as well. Like, it's like you said about Slay. Like, I don't even know that Donovan is the best safety on the team right now.
Right. All right. I don't have too much else to like add to that. My pick. Well, let me just ask you a question. Let's say, like in basketball, could you have an
Jason
elite
Tatum, Celtics.
NBA player who doesn't like do the main thing? So, like, can you have an elite NBA player?
You can talk about DeMarcus Lawrence not having sacks. Like, that's so dumb. And
32nd out of 100. And how is it dumb? You said this is your words. This is your definition. You said he was, quote, an elite defender. How can you be an elite defender if you don't do the most important thing of the position at least a very high level? He clearly has not done that. He's not an elite defender. He took a pay cut last year. Why did he take a pay cut? Because he was so good? Because he was so good he had to take a pay cut? There are 54 players with more sacks than him since 2019. Again, 32nd out of 130 edge rushers. He is certainly a good player. He is nowhere near an elite player, which is what you said he was. So just by virtue of that, I have to take DeMarcus Lawrence.
The biggest lock of the year was you taking DeMarcus Lawrence. By the way, I've said he's an elite run defender, to be very clear.
No, you said elite defender.
Well, look, the words may have. Look, if you really go back, that has always been my point. I may have, omitted the word run at times when we've gotten like heated talking about him, but that he is truly elite at that. I think he's a very good pass rusher. I understand the general idea behind your point, but I think it's being purposefully obtuse. Now, I'm fine if you want to say he's overrated, but he is still a player and a tool worth having for the Cowboys. Like, he makes their defense overall operation work. The best argument, I've told you this before, is that when he missed time at the beginning of the 2021 season, after week 1, I mean, that not only unlocked Micah Parsons, the pass rusher, but that like kind of, they didn't skip a beat. Like, they were totally fine. They didn't skip a beat either. Yeah.
Miss a beat.
Skip, miss, or they're both fine. They're interchangeable in this sense. So, like, that's a solid argument. He missed most of his rookie year, if you want to go that far back. I mean, like, my point is, I think he, and like, you'll laugh or whatever, I think he belongs in the, not that he's like a Ring of Honor player or anything like that, but he's like in the Jason Witten category of like very good player, very much worth having around, improves everybody else around him. There's some leadership involved there, et cetera, et cetera. I understand. I can't I can't tell you like, oh, he does have the sacks. Like, they don't exist. You know what I mean? Like, I can't tell you that, but he is an elite run defender. That has been and always will be my primary point. But I get your point too.
All right, let's take a break.
Boom. Welcome back. While we were on a break, Brandon told me what the last meal he ate was.
The last meal I had was,
man, for the podcast audience, he's like closing his eyes and like really racking his brain.
I really didn't. I kind of just like, I haven't had like a meal in a
It looked like you were thinking really hard about that.
Kind of been just like snacking on things. I had some leftovers and whatnot, like not like a full.
Can I ask you something on this subject?
I guess I'll say it was I went to New York City. My friend Jess, shout out to Jess. on Friday last week.
Who's
And
that girl?
we got
It's
some
Jess.
I don't know what that is. We really got some really good ramen for dinner. So
Very quickly, when I was out of town, the person watching Bear, who's appeared on the episode today, by the way.
oh, sorry, Red Crest chicken. Actually, it was on Saturday with Zach. Yeah,
Good
we had
answer.
a really good dinner. Yeah, boom.
At one point I was just checking in, like, how's Bear, whatever, and then I said, has he eaten his food? And the person watching him said, he's been grazing. Is that like a common thing? Like, would you say that about a dog? I thought that was really strange.
So I watch dogs sometimes too, like for my friends or
Right.
especially in the off season, I'll do like like a Rover or whatever.
That's what it was on. It was on Rover.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
not
I kind of
like
like
a sponsor.
I like to ask people sometimes, like, if their dog is a grazer. Like, so, like, do you want me to leave the food out? Do I just like, because some dogs like just gobble it down, so you can't just like necessarily like leave the food out or like feed them constantly. Or some dogs, you do leave it out and they'll get to it when they want to get to it.
I thought it was a weird way to describe the dog's
No, it makes sense.
eating behavior.
They kind of graze because it's like they pick at it. They kind of like they'll have a couple pieces.
That's what I'm saying. I would have said, like, if like it had been me, I would have said he's been picking at it. He's been nibbling. Like, he's been eating bits here and there. Like, I thought it was strange to say he's been grazing, but whatever. That's just my take. The New York Giants. I think we're gonna agree here on offense.
Didn't see a lot of Giants gear when I was in New York City.
Ooh, they don't play in New York City. They're
that's true.
Yeah, it's true. Play in West Rutherford.
The Big Apple.
Yeah.
That's right.
Do you have an apple? Have you ever had an apple in New York City?
I've not had it. I don't think so. Not like the biggest apple guy. I mean, I like the products, but I don't like necessarily the fruit. Like,
yeah, you throw some peanut butter on the plate, like I can get down with that, but like an apple by
I don't think
itself,
it's gross, but I just don't really desire it.
That's true. It's Saquon Barkley. Is that fair to say? Like, it has to be Saquon.
Fruit. What kind of fruit would you want to have? You could have any fruit right now. Go. Instant.
My top fruit flavor is strawberry.
No, like, not flavor. Like actual fruit.
No,
it has to be a real fruit.
I find it strange that it's not my top fruit. You know what I'm saying? Because it is my favorite flavor.
Well, those are different things.
I know, but top fruit is banana. Love banana.
Banana is really, I think, versatile and practical too. It's good to like. It's portable. As it's like as opposed to something like. If you're gonna, I like grapes, but like, oh my god, I get to like pack it or something.
Cotton candy grapes, got to do it.
Those are great. I saw someone recently. There was like I think it was an Instagram.
We've run very long. I know that we kind of owed people, but we're already at 51 minutes.
They put like citric acid on it, so it's like sour, like sour patch. They called it like grapes or whatever. They're cotton candy grapes, but you have that sour element. Anyway, I want to try that. So,
my Giants, pick is Saquon Barkley.
Again, I don't. But really,
dude. Okay, so again, like if we played the like. Who's the least likely to sustain what they did?
That's not necessarily the exercise, though.
I know, but like that's how I viewed it. Like,
well, that's
I don't
like
have
the step back thing we did. This is different. This is overrated where they are right now.
I don't have a passionate thought on who it could be along the offensive line. I don't believe in picking Darren Waller or Paris Campbell.
Believe in that because they needed a go-to guy. Example: Eagles getting
that's not his fault. Then like they made him their go-to guy. That's not his fault.
But he's being overrated. It's by who? By them. And they got a dude entering his age 31 season who has missed 14 games over the past 2 years. He's the highest paid tight end in the NFL. He's the highest paid tight end in the NFL at $17 million per year. That's above George Kittle at 15 and Travis Kelce at 14.3. So it's not even like a small gap. This dude is absolutely being overrated. He's like the solution for Daniel Jones and the Giants, even though hasn't really been like the monster Darren Waller that you would think of for the past 2 seasons. And I think this is another fantasy football thing. I think fantasy football guys are absolutely overrating him.
I do think that I agree with you. Like it has some like Jonnu Smith to New England vibes. Like, and I fell for that. I was gonna like when they signed him and Hunter Henry. Like I was all about that. I thought like, oh, here they come, whatever. So it does have a little bit of that. They didn't sign him, so they don't get penalized for that in my mind. They did trade for the contract. You know what I mean?
So contract.
Like that's fair.
They didn't sign it, but like they traded for it after he like 6 months after he got it.
I get your point, but I don't think it's fair to say Darren Waller, the Giant, is overrated.
He is.
We've just approached this
exercise on him being their guy. They're overrating him.
I don't think so. What did they trade for him? A 4th-round pick? I mean, that's not overrating him.
It's not just that. It's that and the money. And also, like, he's their go-to guy. Look what they have at wide receiver. They don't have a lot of wide receiver. They're banking on him being the guy of the offense.
Right now, you can have Saquon or Darren Waller on your team. You don't have to give up anybody, but you can have one of the two. Who are you taking?
I mean, it's like, what's the team? There's a lot of like things that go into this.
You
Am
can
I
add
talking
them to
about
the
the
Eagles.
Eagles?
You can add them
Well,
to the
yeah, I mean,
Eagles.
I would take Saquon because like the Eagles already have Dallas Goedert.
I totally disagree. I don't care who I have at running back. I would rather have Darren Waller. Like, I mean, like
That's
it's.
crazy.
I think the Saquon thing is crazy. Before last year, which again, and we were both wrong here. So this episode has just been nothing but an hour at revisiting things I've been wrong about, it feels like. But I mean, before last year, Saquon had 2 touchdowns in 2 years. All right. He had
Look,
played in.
I'm never been a Saquon defender. I'm not saying he's like
I mean, like, again, he was awesome last year and deserves a
he
lot
was
of credit.
underrated by
Yeah,
us
I
entering
agree.
last year.
I disagree. I think he was properly rated by us.
No,
Like,
no. Come on, we were too low on him. He was
there
better.
was.
He was better. Did he exceed our expectations? Yes, he did.
Yes, but the reasons the expectations were so low were like fair. Like at this time last
I
year,
agree,
he had played in 15 games over the last 2 years.
but
He
we
had
also didn't give enough credit to his
171
talent.
rushing yards over the last 10 years, 2 years. I mean, like, so he blew up. But like, do you think that like these are Saquon's career rushing yards by season in order? So in 2018, 1,300 yards, awesome. 2019, 1,003 yards, awesome. 2020 injury, 34 yards. 2021, 593 yards. Last year, 1,300 yards. Who is he? Which dude is he? Like, and I don't mean to just like focus on yards, but like he is. If AJ is probably going to regress, like that's lurking like around the corner for Saquon. There's no way. There's. I think I asked you earlier who was the like second best running back in the NFL. Some people I think would say Saquon over Nick
Probably.
Chubb.
Yeah.
Like I don't buy that. Like, no. And so, like, you talk about Darren Waller having the fantasy bump. If any player in the NFL has the fantasy bump, it is Saquon Barkley. And he came from a big program, was a super big name in college, second overall pick, plays in the Big Apple, right? Like all this stuff going around. Like, no, he is definitely overrated.
I don't think the Giants are overrating him, at least currently. We'll see if they make a mistake by paying him, but it seems like they're being vigilant and not doing that for the time being. So I think they're doing a good job on that. I think I'm sticking by Darren Waller.
I mean, I'm not trying to convince you. I was just trying to make my case. So, I mean, that's really where I'm at.
I'm not changing my opinion.
Okay. I mean, I'm going to sleep the same amount tonight, whether or not you change your opinion or not. So, you want to go first on defense? Should I go first? Like, what do you want to do?
So I have 2 names here.
I have 2 names as well.
I think you had is underrated, Bobby Okereke. He is tied for the 9th
another
highest
player
paid.
who didn't play for the team last year. Dude, you suck at this.
That's not a thing.
It is a thing. They're not rating them as far as who they have been for this
Is he on the roster right now? Yes, he is. Thank you.
So ridiculous.
No, it's not ridiculous. That's never been established as a rule. You're just making this up on the go.
You picked a new player for the Eagles.
This isn't my pick. I'm saying I was between 2. Anyway, hold on.
Thank goodness it's not your pick.
He's tied for the 9th highest paid off-ball linebacker annually. That's like top 10 linebacker money for a guy with 3 career interceptions and 4 forced fumbles in 64 games. That's like, I don't know. Maybe that's not really the best investment. I know they're desperate at linebacker. Anyway, I think it might actually be Leonard Williams, who I think is a good player. Very good player, but you're talking about a guy whose sacks dropped from 11.5 in 2020, which was like an outlier year, down to 6.5 in 2021, down to 2.5 in 2022. Speaking of highly paid players, he is the 5th highest interior defensive lineman in the NFL in terms of annual salary at $21 million. You can't have a guy making $21 million getting 2.5 sacks in a year. Like that's, I don't want to hear about like he creates opportunities for anyone. Like, no, you don't pay a guy 20 plus million to get 2.5 sacks. So maybe he bounces back, but his kind of body of work suggests he's not going to be like that 11 point. I don't think he's hitting double digits ever again. Like I think that was an outlier year and he really hasn't been super close and he's turning in the wrong direction. So I think people are kind of like went from Leonard Williams was highly thought of as a prospect, but then he played for the Jets and didn't really do a ton. The Giants traded for him. It looked like a kind of a really bad trade at the time. It seems like they kind of overpaid for him. Then they signed him to that extension, which actually made the draft pick they gave up for him even higher because there was a conditional pick in there. And so then it was like, oh, now he's good. And I think that he was good there for a bit, but I think he may be overrated in that he's still kind of skating off those couple years ago. And I think last year might be more of an indication of who he is moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, why it's fun. Like, the word overrated is so vague. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can take that, like, you've placed a lot of emphasis on contracts and things like that. Like, that doesn't bother, or like, I don't take that.
That's a metric of how you're being rated.
I mean, that's fair, but so is like vibes. I mean, so
Don't talk to me about vibes.
You're not even wearing the vibes hat, so like you're not feeling the vibes today. I am very much in vibe with the vibes. I thought about going Leonard Williams too. I think considering Okereke is dumb because we don't know what the like investment pays off. Like, what if he is awesome? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, then like he is underrated. You know what I mean? Like, what if they're right? You know what I mean? Like, you can't judge that yet. That's what I think is silly. So I thought about going Leonard Williams for similar reasons, not contractually, obviously, but I do think there's this like.
How can you say that when I said Hassan Reddick was underrated last year, and I was so right about that, and he was.
I mean, that you were right about. I will give you that. So,
anyway, sorry.
Wow.
Who are you?
I was right. I was all the way right about the Colts sucking. So if we're like just letting out things we're right about, like we could do that forever. I'm gonna go Kayvon Thibodeau because I think there's this like he's one of the best.
He was my pick last year, I think.
Like I mean this in the least homer way possible. And wow, you picked a guy who hadn't played for the team last year. What a big shock! Oh my gosh. Anyway, so and again, overrated doesn't mean bad. But like, I think there's this like, oh, he's Michael Strahan.
For every single pick.
Well, like he's Michael Strahan. Like he has the same like talking about vibes. Like he has the same vibe as like Aaron Judge with New York teams. You know what I mean? Like he gets that talk, and that's a big thing. Who would, if you could decide right now, if you could have Kayvon Thibodeau or Sam Williams on the Eagles, isn't it at least a consideration?
I mean, I did not like track Sam Williams.
Sam Williams, for what it's worth, picked up a defensive rookie of the year vote. Like if you care about that, like
I mean, I have literally no opinion on. I did not see him play a ton personally.
4 sacks last year.
Okay,
but like had. Do you know how many Sam Williams had?
I don't know, 6,
4.
Okay.
I mean, like again, like, and that's not like proof he's overrated, but like. Well, Sam Williams, he's got sacks. You care about that when it comes to DeMarcus Lawrence. Now, all of a sudden, sacks are meaningless when it comes to BLG. Wow, what a shock. Anyway, Kayvon Thibodeau, just like, again, like, I think like people are really rushing to make him like a superstar face of the NFL. That's a great way to put it. Good job, you. Okay. Are we done with the Giants?
Done with the G-men. We're going to go on to the C people. The Commanders. Yep. Yeah. Don't read into that. All right. Anyway, offense easy. Andrew Wiley, top 12 paid right tackle in terms of annual value. And you're gonna be like, oh, this is just because he the Super Bowl. No, it's not.
Yeah, a new player on the team. What a big surprise.
Do you know who Brandon Thorne is? You do, right?
Yeah.
He's like a definitive offensive line expert. Like he might be like the quintessential offensive line. Like
okay.
Online.
Well, the defensive line gurus love DeMarcus Lawrence. So what are you gonna say here?
So classified Andrew Wiley as quote unquote a below average starter in his free agency rankings. Wiley allowed the 4th most sacks and the 2nd most hurries of all NFL tackles last year.
No sacks in the Super Bowl.
The Commanders made this guy a top 12 paid right tackle in terms of annual value. And he's also like, this is an ascending player. He may have topped out already. He is going to be, I believe, 29 this season. Yeah, he turns 29 in August. Like, this is a weird bet to make for me, and kind of speaks to where the Commanders are in this weird like limbo stage. But yeah, he's being overrated.
It does feel a little bit like, oh, he was awesome in the Super Bowl, right? Like, let's get that guy. Like, let's get, you know what I mean? Like, it does feel a little bit.
That's like exactly like the pitch. It's like, well, this guy was great in the Super Bowl. Okay, what about when he like sucked in the regular season?
Did you see his 0 sacks allowed t-shirt that he wore in the Super Bowl parade?
Yeah, it was pretty pathetic.
Anyway, again, like
you've just weird gone vibe. That was a weird vibe.
No, I took the vibes in this episode. You can't now like I said the word vibes like 30 seconds ago, and now all of a sudden you want to vibe it out.
Look, I believe in what you say all the time, and like if the Chiefs won, they can talk whatever they want to say because they won. But it is weird when you get to a point where like it became so personal when that wasn't the like attitude leading up to the Super Bowl. Like the Eagles and Chiefs aren't like rival. There wasn't bad blood there. If anything, it was probably one of the more friendly Super Bowls you'll see with like the Kelsey stuff and Andy Reid and everything. Right. So it was weird when like the Chiefs did that and they had like the Eagles tears thing. It's like, Eagles fans aren't even upset by that. It's just like, this is weird. Like we don't have beef with the Chiefs. Like we respect the Chiefs. So I don't really understand that.
I agree with you. Although my opinion, and I'm not emotionally compromised by it, so you tell me, is the biggest like shot was Juju. Like Juju was like, I know
Yeah.
that Wiley wore the shirt, but like, look, like
Yeah.
that's like I do say
But
that
that
all
was
the time.
also
Like,
like a rogue guy. Like like he's not like a chief. You know what I mean? He was there
no,
1 year and he left for the Patriots.
right. But my point on Wiley is like they allowed 0 sacks in the Super Bowl. That is literally true. You know what I mean? Like whether or not like you field whatever blah blah like that is and will always forever be literally true. The Juju thing was like, oh, like we're gonna brag about like a super highly contested and debated thing that like there's literally like 50-50 opinion on. Like
And also,
that
like, he
was
didn't even have
a
a good
weirder flex.
game. Like, you're like outside of it, like he wasn't like an amazing game for him. I don't know. It's
Okay,
weird.
we're not here to relitigate the Super Bowl. Fine, Andrew Wiley. Again, your criteria is dumb.
Well, who else are you picking?
So my thought process is strange. I will
It
admit.
can't be Sam
Like,
Howell. No one is rating him.
you had him as your underrated player. What are you
No one's
talking
rating
about?
him.
It can't be.
That's my point. If no one's rating him, then maybe he's underrated.
I'm not going to pick Sam Howell, but how can I not when you picked him for underrated?
Because who's overrating it?
Who's underrating him? Like, or who's rating him
I think
anything?
the
How
people
can
that
he be
aren't
underrated
saying
if he's not rated anything at all?
I think he has a chance to do something this year.
Oh my god,
that's a chance.
When
to do
I
something.
said that AJ had a chance to regress, it was stupid. We had to grade him off of who he was.
Yeah, that's not a good bet.
No, like this was dumb. And actually, I'm mad at the Commanders because their team is so weird that we can't properly pick things that it leads to stuff like this. I'm gonna go Curtis Samuel. I mean, like this is easy. And I actually think the only person overrating him is Ron Rivera. And I have said that is something I have been right about for a long time too. Like, miss me with this, like, oh, he's the same dude who was, yeah. I mean, like that was Antonio Gibson. Not Curtis.
Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel.
No. It was literally Antonio Gibson's going to be Christian McCaffrey. Like we're going to use him. Like I look it up right now. I promise you. It was Antonio Gibson, but it was the Curtis Samuel stuff was literally he's going to be who Curtis Samuel was in Carolina. That's what it was. But the line about Christian McCaffrey was Antonio Gibson. So yeah, Curtis Samuel. Like, what has Curtis Samuel done? Like name the thing. Like name what he has done as a player in Washington. Do you know how many touchdowns he has as a Washington player?
I do. I'm looking at it here.
2 seasons he has played for this team. 2, and he has 4 touchdowns. They all came last year. Last year, 64 catches, 656 yards, 4 touchdowns. What is his contract? I know you have it in front of you. Like,
I don't.
What? Wow, I didn't way to mess that up completely.
55 burgers, 55 fries. That's what I thought you were doing for a second there when you were reading the
numbers. That's really funny.
55 burgers, 55 fries, 55 tacos, 55 pies, 55 cokes.
Yeah. Wow, man, dude, what's going on? I just looked up and NFL Network's playing the 2018 divisional round game where Dallas lost in LA. What the hell? Like, what did I do to you, NFL Network? But anyway,
that's not even like an interesting game.
I know.
Right? That wasn't like a particularly like the 49ers games have been interesting.
CJ Anderson had like 150 yards in this game. That was like the big thing. But like, yeah, like what is this like?
There's
I don't know
if
this is like
there.
I don't know if this is like, they'll do like player week or whatever. Like they'll let like a player pick like favorite games. Like, I don't know, but whatever. Yes. Yeah. Curtis Samuel, nothing. I just, no.
Okay. We've talked about that before. So yeah. On defense, I'm going to stick with this. He was my step back guy. It's Deron Payne. He had 11.5 sacks last year after only having how much in the first 4 years combined? 14.5. So, maybe that's not going to hold up. He graded 64th out of 142 NFL interior defenders last year by Pro Football Focus. He is tied now for the contract that he got for the 3rd highest paid interior defender in the league. I thought it was interesting that the past 2 years, but especially this past season, by PFF's grading, his run defense has gotten a lot worse. And I don't think that's unrelated to the past 2 years. He was kind of in a situation. So 2 years ago, he was in a contract year, right? Or like approaching the time for an extension. And then this past year, he was tagged and then obviously given the extension after the season. So I almost wonder if he's kind of been like sack chasing a little bit and not playing necessarily the most sound defense that he may have been earlier on in his career here. I mean, again, a guy who had 11.5 sacks last year after only having 14.5 in the first 4 years combined. Like, I think he is being overrated and overvalued because I don't think he's going to be the player he was last year moving forward.
I agree. I mean, that like, I think
that contract could actually look bad.
I don't think they have like a really stout overrated player. Like it was, because I don't.
Oh yeah, who's rating them?
That's what I'm saying. Like I don't think anybody thinks. I think Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen
I
are
think they
good
get
football players.
proper respect.
That's what
They're
I'm
probably the
saying. Like,
most respected players, or some of
and
them on the
and
team.
I think they get proper hype. And I think some of this is like just this offseason with Payne. You know what I mean? Like that's part of it. There's the like Alabama stuff and whatever that sometimes happens or whatever. But like this is the least overrated that any of our, I guess, 16 selections have been. So yeah, Jerome Payne. Boom, lock it up.
Here comes the pain.
Wow. You pat yourself?
Play that?
No.
It's a WWE video game. Pretty good one.
I'm not a wrestling fan. Like I've never been my thing. Like I don't have a problem with it. It's just like
that seems surprising. I feel like you'd be into it.
I'm never like I have lots of friends and family members that are like super. I just never like when I was like I don't know like 6 or 7. My cousins had some wrestling game for the original PlayStation, and I remember like going to their house and they were like all, and I was like, this is whatever. Like I wasn't even like entertained by it. I was like, this whatever. So
I think even people who don't like wrestling might enjoy the games a little bit.
Okay, so everybody let us know what app will make our lives better with the hashtag mixtape app. Everybody let us know why you think and agree with me it's stupid that Brandon continues to pick new players for all these teams, and how mad you are about the AJ thing. I hope my explanation made sense. If it didn't, hey, we had a week off and I'm still trying to get back into my groove.
All right.
So it's time for songs. So I think we should do it this way.
Supposed to be like 10 minutes.
So I'm gonna pick my first song, and then you're gonna pick your first song, and then we'll do Rachel's first song, and then we'll go like inside. You know what I mean? We got to do it in order.
Yes.
So my first song, this came on the treadmill last week. That's where a lot of like songs, and I'm like, I'm gonna put this on there. And I think I like that our playlist is becoming a little bit eclectic. Like it's got a little bit of everything. And sometimes there's a surprising song that, and I've said this before, that when it comes on and you're on the treadmill, you're working the weight machines, you're like, you know what? I'm gonna kick it up a notch. So I'm gonna go with I really want us to have some strong piano on the playlist.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go with Love Song by Sarah Bareilles.
All right. It's funny that you brought up some similar themes to a song that I'm gonna add into the mix as well.
Piano Man.
No, there's piano in this, or keys, I should say. I don't think piano is the
1,000 Miles by Vanessa Carlton.
But no, I do love that song, and I will be adding that to the playlist probably at some point, but not now. Great video too. It is Right Now. Speaking of Right Now, by Van Halen. Some good keys, really good intro. Also a great going for a run maybe, or working out in the gym. This song used to always be on in like the high school gym. Like that song was always on in the weight room. And my dad was a big Van Halen guy growing up, so shout out to my dad, who's a faithful listener along with my mom. So I think he'll appreciate that. Right Now by Van Halen.
Is that your favorite Van Halen song?
It's up there. I like Jump a lot too.
Jump is good. You know how like there are some songs that like instantly transport you to like a place or like a time or like where you first heard it or like a movie or something. The song Dreams by Van Halen. You and I generally are the same on stuff like this. What does that song remind you of?
I don't know. I don't know.
That song, and I think a lot of the audience got this, maybe not the younger ones. That song will always remind me of the end of the Power Rangers movie.
Oh, interesting. I guess I didn't really realize that.
Yeah, like they're
are
like
you a Sammy Hagar guy or a David Lee Roth guy?
I don't have a passion to take. Yeah, but I don't have a passion to take one way or the other. But yeah, they're like having dinner and like the world has been saved, and they're all wearing the like colors of their Power Ranger outfits, and nobody's ever noticed this.
The Ivan Ooze, the movie with Ivan Ooze in it?
Okay. Yeah, and at the end, the little kid is like, "Oh, I could be the Gold Ranger," and they're like, "Ha! You're not even old enough, dude." And so then the fireworks start, and they're like, "Ooh, let's stand here and watch the fireworks, save the world." Ivan Ooze is gone forever.
Ivan Ooze did scare me when I was a kid.
And then the song like it's super cool. Anyway, okay.
Rachel's pick.
Rachel's first song. She actually sent us this really on time last week, and then we didn't record. Yep. It is "Dreams and Nightmares" by Meek Mill, who reached the worst team in the NFL. So
certainly a banger of a choice that the Eagles used during their Super Bowl run. A great Philly Connect song.
So thank you, Rachel, for the submission. I really like Rachel's second song, but we'll get to that in a moment. Well, so okay, we've caught up.
Us back off.
We've caught us up, and my next song, we have a lot of like 2000s ish. I don't want to call it like rock, but like alternative rock type stuff. Some would call it emo rock. This is in that mix, and I talked about like movies and things. I always think of the movie Employee of the Month. when it comes to this song with
Mm,
Dak Shepard and is it Dane Cook, the comedian, and Jessica Simpson.
I guess.
He works at like a Costco or something like that. This was before the TV show Superstore. Anyway, the song "Do It Alone" by Sugar Cult. I love that song. So that's
Hmm.
my second submission.
I'll have to check that out. I don't recognize that off the top of my head.
Well, you will check it out because you listen to the playlist. So that's what you're doing.
I do. I actually
Right.
do that, and everyone else should do that. I think you liked my suggestion last time, Georgia by Cartel. I'm happy you
I
liked
did.
that.
Yeah.
It's a good
Great
song.
call.
This one's a little different. This is a newer song to me. I stumbled across a dad rock playlist on Apple Music, and this was the second song on there. It is Impossible Germany by Wilco. I'm not like a huge Wilco person. I know some people are, so I'm not trying to like take credit for that. I don't like know them super well as much as other people
I just
do.
discovered this band.
Well, I
Nobody's
feel like
ever heard of
people
it.
who like
Yeah.
Wilco kind of like have some level of like music cred. I'm not trying to steal that cred or anything, but that's a really cool song because I like guitar and kind of like noodling around. There's like a long outro with the guitar on that track that I really like a lot. And also it's a song that was on an album that came out in 2007 that sounds like it came out in like the 70s. Sounds like it came out from a different time, even though it's a more kind of modern-ish song. So Impossible Germany by Wilco.
Okay, that is a solid suggestion. I think we've got a really solid variety here. And Rachel rounds us out with her second one. She said, or her suggestion, her selection is Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. So not quite Love Song by Sarah Bareilles, but similar sort of vibe. The rest is still unwritten. That's a really catchy line from a song.
Yeah, you
know
can't
what I mean?
not like
Right.
have that in your head or start singing that. That's a great pick by Rachel.
You actually said
Yeah.
that you were at a karaoke bar. You told
I
us this,
was.
and that someone sang that, and that it's been in your head all day. That's a good
Yeah.
karaoke song as well.
Mhm.
Secret of karaoke songs is you got to sing something that like everybody knows the words to. You know what I mean? Like you
Sure.
can't go up there and do like "Do It Alone" by Sugar Cult because
Yeah, you can't do a
what
deep
was
cut.
this? Yeah,
It's more fun when the whole place is doing it, and also takes pressure off of you because it's like
right.
everyone's singing. Yeah.
And you really like low hanging fruit. You got to go like Bohemian Rhapsody, like something that doesn't even
That's
like
too
have.
hard. You can't do Freddie, baby.
But
That's too hard.
But you don't have to do like the. That's what I'm saying. Like because it's too hard, like you just do random noises and everybody like understands and everybody's doing it. And
I
like
think it's too
being
hard
on
of a
key doesn't
song.
matter. So. My go-to karaoke song. I won't ever put this on the list, but I go for the like irony and the funny and whatever, just like make people laugh. Man, I Feel
Mhm.
Like a Woman by Shania Twain.
That's a great song.
It is a great song. Okay, let's get out of here. And while we do, BLG is going to sing "Man, I Feel Like a Woman" by Shania Twain. Dun, 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 dun.
Mm.
You did the most important part. Let's go, girls.
Oh, I always forget about that iconic part. All right.
Okay.
We'll be
Then
back next week.
just give us a "Let's Go, Girls." And we'll get out of here.
Let's go, girls. See you.